Hello, everyone. Good evening for those in North America. I'm Secular Spirit. And if you're joining me here, my hope is that you just watched the premiere of my Ramadan short film, Yaseen. And yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. I mean, it's kind of a tough word to use, enjoy, because it is such a heavy subject matter, and I think a really personal one to a lot of people, especially if you're watching this, if you're ex-Muslim. I think a lot of ex-Muslims can relate to the experiences of the character narrating the story, Yasin, and his experiences with his mother. And yeah, I just got the idea to do something that was Ramadan themed, that was a little bit different from what I'd done before. And yeah, kind of just threw that together over the last week, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. And I hope whoever's watching got some value from it. And so I wanted to do this live stream afterwards, and I credit Apostate Aladdin for giving me the idea to do this, because he's done this before for a few of his short films. I recommend subscribing to the YouTube channel Apostate Aladdin, by the way, if you haven't heard of it. I think a lot of you here have, though. And I always forget to do this for my own channel, but yeah, if you like my content and you liked the short film, please like it. Please like this live stream and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And yeah, so what I wanted to do here is to share a little bit about why I came up with the story. It's based on a true story, as the video mentions in the short film. And I wanted to also explain why I think the message in it is so important. So, call-ins are welcome as well if you want to just share your thoughts on the short film, if you want to share your own experiences that may be similar to what Yassine went through in the story, and honestly, any kinds of observations or insights or shared experiences you wanna just tell people watching. Those are all welcome as well. I do have someone waiting in the wings to talk. It's a past Muslim who has come on live streams before with me. But yeah, before I do that, I do want to just talk a little bit about the inspiration behind the short film. So I've mentioned more or less the kernel of truth in the story before in past live streams and past posts on social media. But this goes back to the early days before I even thought of doing anything like social media or YouTube channel, and before I even wrote my book, which I initially wrote about my experiences of leaving Islam. And this was back when I was in journalism school, and we had a class where the assignment was create a magazine from scratch. So we were responsible for the look of it, the design, doing all the interviews, taking the photographs. And the fun thing about it was we got to pick the subject that we wanted to write about as a feature article. And I got the idea to, why don't I do something about the struggles of ex-Muslims? Because I realized it's something that uh, I never thought about. It's something, I mean, I was ex-Muslim, but I never thought about other ex-Muslims really. I was just maybe a bit caught in my own bubble of just, figuring out my own life. And I realized that you don't really hear about them at all, like especially not in the Middle East, and not very much in Western culture either. So I decided to do an article just talking to ex-Muslims about their experiences. And one of the ex-Muslims I talked to shared with me the story that is the inspiration for Yaseen. So he told me about how he had left Islam, but he hadn't told his parents. He was afraid to tell his parents. He was worried that they would disown him, maybe, or it would just cause a lot of difficulty and strain on their relationship. And so he just pretended to be Muslim. So he didn't live with his parents. I could be mistaken, but I think they were living in another country. But whenever his mother came to visit him, he was just put in this position where he had to fake being Muslim around the clock. And he told me he just pray with his mom, do the prayers 5 times a day, and she had no idea that he was not a Muslim and he was staying silent. And I thought that was just the saddest, most depressing thing, that mother and son one of the most powerful bonds that exist, and they're doing this supposedly powerful spiritual thing together, and yet it's built on a complete lie. And the thing that was so tragic about it was that this lie was built on love. He was lying because he loved his mother. He didn't want her to be upset. He didn't want to ruin the relationship. He wanted her to be happy. So, so it's such a tragedy. I think it beautifully and really tragically captures what is so wrong about religion. For all the positives that can be talked about religion, it gives us inner peace and gives us hope and whatever you want to call it. It gives us meaning in life. It's it's based on dogma, and this dogma destroys lives. It destroys families, and this kind of experience that this ex-Muslim who shared a story went through is something that I've heard many times, and uh, his story, in a sense, is not a bad one because his family's still intact. There's so many families that have been destroyed, like literally have been destroyed because one person doesn't believe in God anymore, or some variation of that. They're not practicing their religion properly or the way their parents want them to, and yeah, that in a nutshell. I don't think there's a better way of describing how toxic religion can be than something like this experience. So, yeah, I mean, I always remember the story and I've shared it more than once. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to do with a little bit of creative embellishment. So, mm, the other aspects of the story, like the father and the brother having passed away, is not a true story. That is not the experience of the ex Muslim I spoke to. Just heightened the drama, I suppose. And yeah, so I just put it together. And uh, I also wanted to just show you. So I got a friend to illustrate the short film because I can't draw whatsoever. That's one creative thing I'm incapable of doing. And so she asked me to do some mock-up sketches, to basically storyboard the whole thing. And I wanted to, and I still have my storyboard sketches here, and I wanted to show it to you all just so you can see how bad at drawing I am. So here's here's one sheet here. If you can take a look at this wonderful artwork right here. I mean, I think this one is my favorite. Look at that. This is an adult who drew these things, believe it or not. Yeah. So here's a couple more. Yeah, that's just brilliant. I'm really good at drawing proportions that are realistic. I love the I love the arm here. I'm a student of the human body and its proportions, as you can tell. So yeah, I realized I couldn't do the art myself, so I got a friend to do it for me, and I think she did a pretty good job. And so yeah, that's all I really have to say for now. So anyone watching, if you have any questions about the story, if you want to know more details about the inspiration behind it, feel free to ask in the live chats. I'm going to see if Past Muslim is ready to join me. Uh, yeah, Past Muslim says I'm a real Picasso. Yes, clearly that was one of my inspirations. So I'm going to get you in here, Past Muslim, in three, two, one.
Hey, what's up? Can you hear me?
Hey, Past Muslim, I can hear you.
Man, it kind of I wow, dude, that was a really that hit home for a lot of ex-Muslims. I was not expecting that. When I started watching it, I was like actually um just kind of reliving a lot of my own feelings and probably the feelings of many other ex-Muslims. But she also came on like so jovial, so it was kind of like it's kind of funny, you know. Um, I gotta give it to you. That was an amazing video. I think it
Thank you.
communicated the experience of a lot of ex-Muslims very accurately, you know, because people forget that it's not just about debates and philosophy. There are people behind the opinions, and that means there are families and relationships. So it's nice to get some focus on that for once. You know?
No, I totally agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially on social media, that get bogged down in the whole, is an infinity possible, or infinite regress and all that
Right,
kind of stuff.
right,
But
right,
when it really boils down to it, what matters is human lives, our relationships, and how religion damages those relationships. In a way, its truth is almost, it's hard to say irrelevant, but it's kind of missing the point when we dwell on those kinds of abstract philosophical arguments, when we can see the damage just in like in the short film, just like someone, a son who can't really be himself with his own mother because who knows what the consequences are going to be. It's so tragic.
right, right. Yeah, I know so many people who they only see, especially Muslims, through the lens of debate and argumentation, and they constantly think it's like a West versus East thing, you know. And sometimes the only way that I can get through to them is just by talking about, how I feel and how the situation makes me feel. And this was actually a good reminder for me to maybe focus on that more, when I deal with my own family, and to the other viewers out there, because very few people are really like they're not convinced by you know debates. They're just convinced by experiences. I know that was the case for me. Like I got to meet plenty of non-Muslim people and kind of witness like how they interacted with their families, with their pets, and how they celebrated, and I was able to see the humanity in them, and that's when I really started having problems with the way that I was raised to see the world. And so I think it's helpful not only in terms of leaving Islam, but in just getting someone to change their perspective on something.
It's so true. I mean, whether people are converting to Islam or choosing to remain Muslim if they were born into it, or even leaving Islam, I think it's hard to discount the impact of just the emotional, personal experiences that we have. I mean, I have a younger brother who's an ex-Muslim, and I remember when I asked him why did you leave Islam, and he basically said, so my background's Palestinian, and he said just one day he saw the news or something, and he saw that Israeli soldiers, the Israeli military, had just massacred a bunch of children, innocent children again, or something like that. I
Right.
mean, it's tragic because it happens so often. It's hard to
Yeah. Yeah.
remember which instance or even which year that was.
Right.
And he just said he just said I realized that God is bullshit. Like if there was a God, and
Right.
this God is supposed to be the God that we're claiming him to be, then there's no way he's real. I'm not saying
Right.
that was a good reason to leave Islam. I don't necessarily think that's a good reason to leave Islam if that was the only reason. But I think that's what opened the door for him to see through the perfect veneer of
Right.
Islam, because we know what the defenses or rationalizations of such a thing happening and Allah allowing it to happen would be. But it just goes to show that it really is the emotional impacts and personal experiences that sway people more so than anything else. And the last thing I just want to say before maybe letting you ask a few questions if you have any is is just really hits home how, when we think about it, a lot of so this is a very recurring theme that children, so children who are born Muslim, they leave Islam, and then the friction, the conflict in the relationship is solely coming from the side of the parents or the elders, where they will not accept their child as an ex-Muslim. They will not accept their
Oh
child
yeah.
for having different beliefs from them, whether they become atheists or they convert to Christianity or, I don't know, Scientology. Well,
Right.
actually, if they're converting to Scientology,
Yeah.
yeah. um, so anyway, I don't want to single out Scientology, or else who knows what's going to happen to me.
Right.
Um, but you see my point. It's so one sided, because in many cases, the ex-Muslim, so the son or daughter or whatever, they're not expecting their parents to deconvert, to leave their religion. They just want to be themselves, and they don't want to practice the religion anymore. So that's a real tragedy, that it puts these parents in this position where, and I understand the parents' position, where if you genuinely believe that hell awaits your child if they, forsake God, then obviously you're going to lose your shit. Obviously you're going to panic and get upset and try to do whatever you can to, keep them believing.
Right.
And just the consequences that come out of that are just so terrible. But yeah, if you have any questions or insights you want
I
to
do,
share,
and there are so many things that you said that I want to comment on and that I have questions about, but I'm
go
going to
ahead.
try to keep it organized. One of the things I thought about was, where is the line between, being honest and being cruel when you have to tell your family members, And you sort of have to make that judgment yourself, like who can handle this information and who can't handle this information.
I wish I had the answer to that question, because I think that one is such a pivotal one, really. Because so my parents know I'm an ex-Muslim,
Okay.
and for the most part they support this channel. They don't in certain ways, um, um, but most of the rest of my family doesn't know I'm ex-Muslim. And my grandparents on my mother's side both recently passed away, and so I promised my mother I wouldn't talk about them too much on the. So this is one of the
Right, right. Sorry to
things
hear
they
about
weren't
that.
happy. Oh, no, thank you, I appreciate that. But one thing I just wanted to say is, so my grandmother, she really believed that there's an afterlife. She really believed that God was holy and completely good, and that we would all be together in the afterlife. And I just reached this position where I realized I can't say the truth. I can't tell
Right,
her that I don't believe anymore. And it wasn't even because uh I was afraid of what she would do or how she would react.
right,
She It was because I didn't want. She was an older person, and it gave her hope. It gave her optimism, because she had a lot of medical problems. And so who was I to come and say, "Oh, no, you're just gonna die and that's it"?
right,
It felt like, it felt terrible.
right.
It would feel like I'm a terrible person to do such a thing. So I never said anything, and so she passed away not knowing the truth. And
Yeah, yeah.
so
And
I
and
don't know what there is. Is there an answer to that question, really, of knowing when you can and when you can't, or just taking the risk and the fallout comes however it may come?
I personally I'm wary of indiscriminate honesty because
I understand that.
I know people who have been cut off from entire families for having done that sort of thing. And I also know people who have family members who are in poor health, and they really deeply believe, and they've been like sort of advocates for that person without realizing they're an ex-Muslim. So in some cases, telling somebody who you already have a really good relationship with, who's physically ill, um, it's it's hard to be able to make um, that call, and I think it's justified for people to withhold information in those cases. I still think it's unfair that um, you know we have to kind of like keep that information secret. I mean, like, you want to be able to be honest about who you are, and like you want to be able to be proud of who you are. You want to be able to discuss how you feel about things with the people who are close to you. I'm not saying like, bring up religion and politics at the dinner table every chance you get. But also, like, you shouldn't be put in a position where you're constantly keeping secrets and just kind of practicing um, um, you know being quiet whenever you hear a comment that's obviously needs to be corrected, or should be opposed and is going unopposed, or could just have some type of negative impact on either your siblings or the other people in the environment who are listening to what's being said. So it's really a complex situation, because there are so many cases where you want to speak up because what's being said should should be corrected, but it all depends on who's there, who's listening, and what's the real benefit of telling the truth. If it's not going to result in like a cordial exchange of information where the other party is going to actually be able to look at what you're saying and think about it,
Well,
you know?
that's the risk, right? That's the risk. Who knows how they're going to react? I think that's the thing that terrifies a lot of ex-Muslims the most. They really don't know how their parents are going to react, because you might get some hints sometimes of how they would based on things they occasionally say, or they'll say, "Oh, this person, he left and he's shaming his parents," or you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
But you never really know how they're going to behave when it's their own child. Like, it could be completely fine. It could be fine at first, but then it gradually gets worse. Your mother could be okay with it, but your father can't handle it, or vice
exactly.
versa. So, I mean, feel free to share as much as you're comfortable with sharing about this. But have you ever found yourself in a position kind of similar to the character in the short film, where you're directly practicing something that's Islam related, whether it's prayer or something else, and you're just kind of doing it as a pretense?
Oh yeah, all the time,
I'm
all the
sorry to hear
time.
that.
That's not the case anymore, because I'm fortunate enough to live on my own in
That's
better
good.
circumstances now. However, in the past, it was constant, and the only way that I could avoid it was really by getting out. And it was hard because with my siblings, especially the younger ones, they didn't understand what that behavior was. And I didn't really think it was my place to give them that information, knowing what the consequences could possibly be. And so it's difficult to just not be able to explain your behavior, but everyone wants an answer, but at the same time they really don't want an answer. You know what I mean? And so it's rough, man. It's rough. I actually have even spoken to some people, and been honest with them. I'm kind of like a half closeted, half not. um, but in some cases, it was fine. In some cases, it was fine, and it didn't affect the relationship at all. If anything, it might have made the relationship better, actually, because now we had something to bond over. I knew that, like, this person is here for me because of who I am, and not because of which positions I hold. But in other cases, I've lost people, and it's become like antagonistic and uncomfortable around them, people that I've been close with. Um, and if you asked me 5 years ago, could you ever imagine hostilities between, you know, this person and you? I would have said not in a million years. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. And it's not even like the hostile behavior is coming from us as ex-Muslims. It's just a consequence of us being honest. And I don't even want to get into how, unfortunately, like, the Quran describes people like us. And some people take that to heart. you know they can't really take your word for it that this is just what you feel, and your position. And instead they think there are some sort of alternative, devious intentions, that shaitan is at work, or something like twisted.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to just look at it from their perspective, when you tell someone who's Muslim and Islam is a really important part of their identity that you don't believe anymore, naturally the question is going to be, why don't you believe anymore? And once you start criticizing it, even if you're not doing it in a malicious way, but just trying to explain why you don't believe anymore, like you might say, I don't think there's really good evidence for its existence. Even something as, inoffensive on the surface like that, you're basically questioning uh, a key and integral part of their identity. You're
Oh
you're
yeah.
saying you're saying to them, you are believing this thing when you shouldn't be, because
Right.
I don't believe it for these reasons. So the thing that they're going to infer from that is that you think that they're believing it for bad reasons.
Right.
And that extends to all the different aspects of it, because if you criticize, for example, Islam's views on homosexuality, for example, uh, you're saying that they have a wrong or bad view on homosexuality, and that
Right.
extends to pretty much every aspect of Islam. So it's hard to not take it personally. It's hard to not get upset, because Islam has this way of just ingratiating itself into your identity. So you feel
Right.
like you and Islam are one and the same. And that's the kind of thing I realized when you're criticizing it, and the backlash is so negative. That's why it is, because they perceive it as a personal attack. Even if you don't mean it as a personal attack, it doesn't matter. There's
Right.
in a way, there's no way of avoiding that.
That's why I really appreciate the work that you do and the work that Apostate Aladdin does and some of these other guys, because you normalize being able to talk about how you feel first and foremost as a human being, and then also why you disagree on like a ideological level. You know, to be honest, for a while I always felt bad about that. And it wasn't really until I started watching your guys' videos that it dawned on me that you know people they like there's some type of social cohesion that occurs with them and Islam. And it's like inseparable, and regardless of what you do, no matter what, you're going to upset them. So if you're going to upset them, you might as well, you know, do it in the best way.
I totally agree with that. Like, one thing I realized, because when I first started doing this stuff, I made a pact with myself to try and be as inoffensive as possible without compromising my thoughts on Islam. So, I won't do jokes like Prophet Muhammad is a pedophile or is a pedo, or um, things like that.
Right.
That I know are just needlessly aggravating Muslims. I'm not going to call Islam Pislam, which I've
Right.
seen
Right.
some ex-Muslims do. I'm not going to engage in any of that stuff, because it's counterproductive, and this is something I've talked about before, and I think Apostate Aladdin has as well. Like, we're trying to reach out to Muslims too, because they're in many ways victims of Islam as well. They just don't see it that way. They think it adds value to their lives, and perhaps it does in some ways, but I think it takes away from their lives in many ways as well. So that's it in a nutshell. There's no way you can't offend Muslims when you criticize Islam, but there's better ways of doing it. I mean, I get criticism from Muslims all the time. Apostate
Oh,
Aladdin
that's
gets it
insane.
even worse from me. Apostate Aladdin gets it way worse than me. So in a way, it's unavoidable. I mean, we're pretty.
It's because
we're
you guys actually are. I mean, there's no shade being thrown, but you guys are more ethical than people would expect. You're more compassionate than people would expect. And so they have to wrestle with this compassionate
oh,
person who's
because
making
we're
a.
not monsters. We're
Yeah,
not.
exactly. Those are the
Yeah.
hardest people to deal with, to be honest. For me, that's one of the number one reasons why my family can't dismiss me, because I've never been a rude, disrespectful person, even when I was Muslim. And,
Mhm.
you know, leaving Islam didn't really change that. I'm still the same exact person in a lot of ways. And there are a lot of like sort of tacit like perspectives and beliefs that I still hold, some which are left over from Islam and some just from my overall personality as like a male from a certain ethnic background and a certain part of the world at a certain age. And for me, what really changed my mind, it was really never like the Christopher Hitchens type, Sam Harris type of crowd. Um, I always thought they were obnoxious. for me, it was more like it was really like the dry academic um, types that didn't even care if Islam was true, you know, and just went on about informing people about psychology and anthropology and sociology.
Hmm.
And it was also the, and not to be cheesy, but the friends I made along the way. A lot of the non-Muslim people I know are some of the closest friends I have. And that was also a big difference between me and my Muslim family members and friends. They really interacted with non-Muslim people on like a professional and like a necessary kind of level, while I did it for like leisure. So yeah.
Oh, so your non-Muslim friends, i.e., the servants of Satan who seduced you to
Oh
sin.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I've heard that before too. Just
Oh,
they
of
love
course.
to take the agency from you.
Of course. Yeah.
You and the crazy part is I don't even like like one of the biggest contentions for me was the whole term non-Muslim, because the majority of the planet you is that group of people.
Well, I mean, it kind of makes sense to look at the world that way if you truly believe in Islam, doesn't it? I
Yeah, and it
mean,
was
the
so
belief is that we
limited.
are all Muslim. It's just a lot of us aren't following it. You know what I mean? You're born Muslim.
Right. It was just
That's
such a
perfect. That's the
lazy
perfect
way.
cult. That's the perfect cult
Right.
introduction, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, just a binary.
Hmm. Exactly.
It was lazy though. It was lazy because there were so many people I knew who were nothing like each other that were all non-Muslim. And, you know, they couldn't all be the same, especially with enthusiastic Muslims. They even make it a point to kind of laugh at them, for being non-Muslim, but the joke's on them because you're playing a character, that's actually what you think they're like because of the brainwashing that you've gone through. It's not an honest representation of like the spectrum of thoughts, opinions, feelings, and behaviors that other people have. So, yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah. And I mean, if you're, I do have a Muslim who's waiting to join, to call in as well. Friendly Muslim, who some of you may recognize from Apostate Aladdin's live streams. I think Friendly Muslim has been there a couple of times. Uh, one thing that I want to ask him, and I want to hear your opinion on it, is just to talk about the short film again. Can you perceive it being hostile or antagonistic or critical to Islam in an offensive way? I'm going to ask Friendly Muslim this question as well, but I wanted to ask you first.
So I think if you're a normal person with regular amounts of compassion, no. But if you have been socialized to believe that any dissent is um, under like some type of influence from shaitan or from uh, you know Uncle Sam or whatever it is, then you may perceive it that way. I know people who will look at that and probably belittle the character of Yasin and be like, "Oh, what a wuss," you know. So, people like Darwa boys, there are types, and so it really just depends on who's watching and who's listening. But I know you have more people coming on. Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure. That was a great video, and look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much, Past
speaking
Muslim.
with you again.
Yeah, you're more than welcome to join in future live streams as well. And yeah, I mean, it's really, I think it really feels good to me to know that it's something that really resonated with you, and I hope with others as well. It wasn't easy to rewatch it once I finished it. I actually got emotional at the end because I just got overwhelmed briefly at the thought of like how often this must be happening all the time.
I honestly, at first, thought it was going
Yeah.
to be some story about a character in the Hadith or the Quran, and I was not ready to watch it at all. So it definitely had an emotional impact on me, and I'm probably going to be discussing it with some of my close ex-Muslim friends, and just trying to unpack that trauma, as they say,
Oh wow.
but maybe just have a conversation about it. Anyway, thanks for facilitating that, and I'll see you around.
Thank you so much for joining Past Muslim. We'll talk soon.
Lates.
Bye. Okay, so that was past Muslim. And to answer the question from Happy Camper, yes, this is past Muslim from the past stream. It's always good to hear from him. And I wanted to also just address a couple of the questions in the comments about why there isn't a super chat here. So as I'm not sure how to pronounce your name, Hawiya said, you can't. I think this is correct. You can't do a super chat until you hit 1,000 subscribers. I'm almost there, so hopefully that can happen soon. Thank you, Secular Sakai. Almost to 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there. And thank you to Apostate Aladdin for briefly stopping in. I really appreciate that. And I think Robert is here. Robert is a longtime follower of this channel from the early days. Uh, Robert says, "You and Aladdin and your soothing storytelling voices, I support." Thank you so much, Robert. I think Aladdin has me a bit as a has me a bit beat there in the ASMR game, but I do try my best. So thank you, Robert. So I do have. Oh yeah, Robert says you can also put your PayPal or Patreon. Until then, yeah, that's in the works. Just need to take the time to do it. Juggling this with a full time job is not easy, I must admit, but definitely worth it. So, friendly Muslim is waiting. I think. Let me just check to see if he's there. In the meantime, feel free to ask me any questions if you have any about the short film. Friendly Muslim, are you there? All right, friendly Muslim is there. So I'm going to add you in three, two, one.
Hey,
Hey, friendly Muslim, how's it going?
I'm good. Yeah, I'm really nervous to
It
call in on this one.
it's well, it's great to finally have you on a live chat. I've seen you comment in previous ones, and I've actually seen you talk with Apostate Aladdin for probably hours in cumulatively in different videos. So I feel like I know you kind of a little bit, but this is a great opportunity to finally just speak just the two of us.
Yeah, so that was. I mean, I just wanted to appreciate your body of work that you put
Well, thank
together,
you.
just as a piece of work. And the reminder came on, and just for the time difference, suddenly I'm watching it, and
Yeah, I was gonna say, how late is it? I assume you're in the UK by your accent. Is
yeah,
that a
it's
fair
about
assumption?
1 o'clock.
Wow.
And
Okay.
so I was catching up on some emails, and then suddenly it was the reminder, and I was like, "Oh wow, it's happening now!" And so I just clicked onto it. But yeah, it I mean, I was in tears at one point, so it was very powerful. Your voice and the way you put it together was very touching. So mainly the reason to call was to say, look, I really appreciate the body of work that you've
Thank
put
you.
together, and the effort that you put into it. And it is an eye opener of what people are going through, and it is difficult also to for people in these situations and families. It's very difficult, and I'm learning more about these situations, and also I'm trying to learn from them. So if there are people that are in these situations, then there can be some offer of guidance, or if I'm talking to someone's parent and telling them how to understand their child better and how to deal with them better, and so
Yeah.
it's I'm taking a lot of learning from it. I hope people aren't offended by
No,
me doing that.
no,
you
not at
know
all. I did just want to say one thing, friendly Muslim. So, in case you don't know much about me, so I grew up Muslim. I grew up in a Muslim country, the UAE, and I was a full proper believer. And so when I make something like this short film, I understand the perspective of the mother in the story. I understand the perspective of Muslims on it. And so the one thing I just want to say is the way I was raised to be Muslim, that kind of friction and conflict that happens between a parent and a child is wrong. A good Muslim shouldn't be doing something like ostracizing their child, disowning their child, beating their child, whatever it is, because they happen to have doubts about Islam or even if they leave Islam. So that's just to let you know that is something that I'm aware of, and this was something that I was taught as a Muslim. So the question then becomes, and I'm curious to hear your opinion. Where do you think it comes from to have this attitude towards, let's say, your own kids when they become apostates, or even if they just have doubts about Islam?
Um, such a broad question.
I'm
Because
sorry, it's kind of a tough one to
yeah,
answer.
no, it's a good
Well,
question.
you don't have to answer it
No,
specifically. Maybe just
it's
give me your thoughts on the
no.
subject.
I want to answer it in a way that's
Take your time.
to because sometimes when it's a deep question, it requires a deep, thoughtful answer also. Because I'm thinking about different scenarios in my head where it's also been a bond between two people. So, for example, a mother and a son, and when they are, it's that disattachment and sort of, we've got this in common. You're my son, for example. You're a Muslim, and you're now breaking from that and breaking from our identity. And you're right in what you said, that sometimes it can be from the other side, that they feel it's you're rejecting them, and you shouldn't be believing in this, and I do believe in this. And so it's a very thin, it's a difficult line between people. It's also been a case that, fine, maybe a girl, she wants to see somebody outside of the religion, she just wants to start dating or something, that causes friction within a family unit also. And that can, I've had lots of situations where I've seen that happen. Um and so it's a really tough one as to how to, also how someone, different families and cultures, man, to be honest. I've from with the one thing I've learned here, Islam and the way it's being given to people in different parts of the world, and ex-Muslims and things, everybody's got their individual story also. Some are similar, and some are very unique also. And so I have to try and get sort of, I'm learning, and that's the best way to answer that. I'm still learning about everybody's individual experiences. When I heard your testimony about how, I, when you were talking about wudu, and when you were learning and you had the little pamphlet and you didn't want to take it into the bathroom, like that resonated so much with me. I went back to my a little kid basically, and remembered me, grabbing the booklet, running to the bathroom. Oh no, I can't take it into the bathroom with
Wait,
me.
so that happened to you as well?
Yeah, exactly.
That's
That's how,
incredible.
and that was literally when I resonated with you, and I was like, yeah, like, it's a weird situation because, in a way, because I mean, in the real world, there are people pretending to be ex-Muslims also, and so in the back of your head, sometimes you have that. But when you told that story, I was like, there's only a Muslim knows what that is like, in a way, or that resonated with me. And I was like, yeah, he's gone through that same thing where you don't want to get the book into the bathroom, and you're running backwards and forwards. And yeah, I went through the same thing. So yeah, that if in one particular story that you told really resonated with me. But yeah, man, I don't know. I think parents aren't educated sometimes in how to deal with a child in this new world. I mean, I'm having conversations with people about LGBTQ uh, uh, issues and how to deal with children. Also, I'm learning about that now, and trying to understand how Muslims can deal with that situation also. So it's a big scope of a new world, that some parents aren't able to deal with these realities. And also, it can be the outer family also, because suddenly, why is your child the apostate, in a way, or why is your child left Islam? Why didn't you raise them correctly?
Exactly.
And
I think the peer
yeah,
pressure plays a big part.
and why isn't your kid a doctor? It can be all sorts of these things within our culture, or anything like that. Sometimes that it can't all be Islam, because I'd be because there aren't our natural cultures where people are Indians, Pakistanis, Arab family, middle, where this has African families as well, and those are other issues that come into play with it. But yeah, I mean, I think as people are older and they're heading towards the other side of life, it's it's important. It gives them a lot of comfort, and mentally, when you've grown up in religion, having to confront that at a later stage of life is very difficult for parents also. And I remember talking to a Christian about this, and he was like, "Listen, mate, even if I'm wrong about my religion, my wife passed away. Brother, I'm sorry to hear about your grandparents also."
Thank you.
And he was telling me he said, "But I have a lot of comfort in the fact that I believe in the afterlife. I believe that there is a place where I may be reunited." So can you take that away from somebody also? Yeah.
As I mentioned earlier, I don't know how to answer that question. In my own personal experience, I couldn't. I couldn't.
So then I think maybe is it just a case of us understanding each other and continually trying to understand and appreciate we have different views on things, and educating each other on how to deal with them in the best way.
That's great to hear. I do have like a more targeted, specific question for
Sure,
you
sure.
to maybe see what you have to say. And I before I ask, I also want to mention that this kind of thing is not exclusive to Islam at all. I mean, I have a friend, grew up in Canada, Christian background. He was an atheist. I think his parents and grandparents, definitely his grandparents, were religious, and he just told me that he just pretends to be still Catholic around his grandmother because she truly believes it and doesn't want him to go to hell. And so here's my question for you, tied to that. How much of it do you think it is? So we talked about, oh, your son is not a doctor. Your son isn't going to medical school to become a doctor. So especially with immigrant families, that can have pretty heavy consequences. I'm sure you're familiar with this whole narrative of we struggled and sacrificed so we can come to this country and give you opportunities, and you want to be a DJ? How dare you? I don't know why I'm picking on DJs, but you know what I mean. I think
DJs
if
make good money, actually. I mean, they make more
well,
than doctors. Some of them,
well,
yeah,
but from their perspective, they
yeah.
don't know anything about DJing. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant to the point. It's just I know if I went to my father when I was 19 and said I'm going to quit university and be a DJ, he would wring my neck. But so because they're worried, this comes from a place of worry and love because they want you to do well in life. They don't want you to struggle and have to sacrifice like they had to. They want you to have a good life. So I think what happens with Islam, I know this is a very long question, but I'll get to the point in a second. Um, with Islam, and when it talks about the afterlife being more important than this ephemeral, fleeting existence we have here, and there's Jannah, the paradise, and Jahim, hell. Uh, and if you believe these are real places, whether they're physical or just exist in your mind, whatever you want to say, if you think that the pain and suffering is real, then that just ups the stakes. And I think that might be possibly what entrenches, let's say, a parent in their position with their child because they're afraid. They're genuinely afraid their child is going to be condemned to hell, whether for eternity or for a very long time. And they're so terrified about that because they love their child so much. They don't want them to suffer. So my question to you is, how much do you think it is the whole high stakes of our fate in the afterlife plays in the attitude of parents with their ex-Muslim children?
It's a good question. It's a deep question as well. Um, that's it's such a tough one because you can see a mother's love for her son, and you can see that I want to be united with you. Is it even that? That you know what that is? It could be even the fact of, you know, I may leave this life, but I want to be reunited with you in the next. And how could you begrudge someone for that? Also, that's a really, I mean, it's a deep question, man. And I've got to be honest that it's the thought that you will not see somebody that you love, someone that you've given birth to. It's a tough one. I can see the comfort that you get in it, but then also, yeah, maybe it's how I think it's driven by fear and love. If I'm being completely honest,
They're
I think
often two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
that it is fear, but it's also love that you don't want to lose someone, but you are getting comfort I mean, I get comfort that, God forbid, you know, I will, I don't know. It's a very, it's a, it's a, it's a heartbreaking situation also to be confronted with. And mentally, I don't know if everybody is able to confront it or wants to, when we are dealing with the world as it is, and, with COVID and things that have happened there, and you're seeing death in front of you,
Yeah.
and every day you wake up going, okay, thank you, and you're grateful for the day that you've got. I mean, for me, that I am, and from losing people or having lost people. Sorry, oh mate,
Take your time. Take your time.
yeah, just losing people, and wow, I wasn't expecting that. Um,
It is
yeah,
it is tough to just think. I mean, just to talk about my grandparents again. When I heard the news about my grandmother and realized that that's it. So from my perspective, my belief is that when we die, that's it. Like who we were, our personalities um, ceases to exist. I could be wrong. I don't have 100% certainty, obviously. It's just I can't believe otherwise unless I see good evidence for it. But the consequence of having that belief is when she died, it just sunk in that that's it. I'm never going to hold her again. I'm never going to see her again. I'm never going to hear her voice again. And she was such a loving, caring, giving person. And to know that that's it is it's always hard to process whether you believe in an afterlife or not because you can't see the afterlife. And I remember even when I had relatives who passed away when I was Muslim, I still had that same grief. But to think that there's no hope of a reunion is, I don't know if there's a way you can get over it. It's just, from my perspective, it is what it is,
yeah,
and
and
we have to make the most out of it.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
no,
it's it's tough. It's tough.
it's I I've always yeah, no, I can't explain this. It's too deep to be on air to explain this, but I've always kind of avoided being around death because of the pain of that loss. I've always found it very troublesome to deal with, and not easy. So I've always tried to appreciate people in the moment when you can, um, because I lost someone very close to me
I'm sorry to hear that.
very suddenly at an age when I probably wasn't mentally ready to deal with it, and it did change my perspective on things. It changed my perspective on life. I've had some near death experiences also, where I was like, "Dang, I'm lucky that I escaped that one." And so again, so again, I think that's just my perspective on how to deal with people and how to deal with every day. But I can see the boy side of things also in that video where his life is not, he's having to pretend to be something he's not, and that is also very painful. So that whole scenario that's painted within that is a very tough, thought-provoking scenario. And I hope if that is spread with people, they just learn or find a way to realize that there are two sides of the coin, and to build a bridge in this life where you can, and not let.
That's very well put because I just feel like whether you're Muslim or Christian or whatever, the way to reach your child, and I'm not a parent, so I can't say I can speak from experience from the parent side, but from the child's side, the way to reach your child is to show them love and empathy. If you want them to let's say you're Muslim and you want them to remain Muslim, being antagonistic and hostile towards them is going to have the opposite effect of what you want.
Yeah.
Like it's the whole fear and love thing. Like if you just try to, or like the carrot and stick thing, if you're just whacking them with that stick, they're probably not going to come back, or your relationship will always have this fractured tension. And so uh, to me, like the whole question of is Islam true or not is unimportant in a way in this regard, because what matters most is a family should stay together. A family's love for each other shouldn't be destroyed by even something like Islam, and that's just my opinion.
No, no, and you're not wrong in it. And parents from parents that I've spoken to, sometimes they just haven't had. They can only sometimes they can only learn what they've been taught, and then they've learned it, and they haven't adapted new skills to deal with their child, or he's going through a phase, or it can even be that, okay, this is the protocol, this is how we've been brought up, we were okay. And but now I think with the generations now, access to more information, more thoughts, different different philosophies, different psychologies, there's a lot more than there's ever been, um, for someone to sort of get around. And from parents' side of view point of view, I know it's a lot better than other generations. I would say
I,
that,
I I agree with you there for sure.
because I think maybe a generation up and a generation up, like literally. I mean, I've known. I mean, one of these Muslims here, Hamza, for example, he converted to Islam, and then his family didn't speak to him, and he lost his family because he converted. Not because he left something. And they weren't very, they were. I don't think they were very strict Christians either. But it was just a case of you've gone over to this thing that we don't understand, and so I just can't be, and that was painful also, But it's brought him in his personal life a lot of joy, But I also appreciate that it cannot bring someone joy also if you don't have that belief in you, or you're pretending to be something you're not. I mean, that's a difficult life to live as well. That's a painful life also, pretending constantly that you're believing something that you just don't, and that's the circle of life, I guess. And so, again, I want to thank you for putting that video together, because and the work you put into it, it's
Thank
valuable.
you.
I'm sure it will bring a lot of comfort to people also. And I've learnt from it also, and it will be on my playlist if I do come across any youth that are struggling, because I have come across youth, and they've had questions, and I've just supplied them with answers. For me personally, I don't necessarily want to convert anyone to Islam or leave Islam. I just want to provide balanced information, and wherever that may lead someone, that's where it leads them, but if it doesn't bring them joy, and I said this on the Aladdin stream, then it's not. Then find something that does fulfill you, and that's fine too. But we do have to have these conversations. I am having these conversations where I can. But yeah, so again, I don't want to take up if you've got other callers, and I don't want to take up from them. But I don't know if you had any questions or.
I just wanted to say that I totally agree with you in terms of we should have these conversations and we should have balanced information. I personally think that people should be allowed to decide for themselves, to be educated, and see things from a balanced point of view, and then make that decision for themselves. In a way, it's a bit tough to do that if you are growing up Muslim in a Muslim country, or you're surrounded by a Muslim community. So in a way, I think it still is good, and I think this is something I was taught as a Muslim as well, that if you have doubts or if you have questions, seek out those answers, because if you believe that Islam is true, that will guide you back to the truth of Islam. In some instances, it doesn't. I mean, but I think the intention or the idea is good. Give the power of information to people and let them decide for themselves
Yeah, and
without pressure as much as possible.
again, as a child, I think I was when I was talking to Aladdin. I think I'm lucky in a way that my mother allowed me to look at everything, you know. And I did have a Quran teacher, and he was a bit strict, and I wasn't enjoying it. And she said, "All right, don't worry about it. You'll come to it when you want to come to it, and that's fine." And she didn't pressurize me, and that has kept me in the loop because I've explored everything. I'm constantly exploring and finding what is making me happy and what is comforting to me, you know. But on the other hand, I completely appreciate other people's perspective and what they've had to go through also. And yeah, so yeah, you said something, and I thought that was a really good idea. I've got it slipped out of my mind because I got a bit emotional when we were talking about our past. But yeah, if it comes to me, I'll probably message you in some way. Um, Something we said in the stream while we were talking was like a really thought-provoking thing.
Yeah, just
Um,
rewatch it, and if you find it, you can message me on Twitter, Instagram, and
okay,
we can chat again as well
cool.
in a
All right,
future live stream.
well, thank you so much for the video. I really appreciate your work and the effort you put into it.
Thank you so
And
much, friendly Muslim. It was great to finally speak with you.
you too, buddy. Take care.
All right,
Thank you so much. Bye.
have a good night.
You too.
Thank you so much, friendly Muslim, for sharing your thoughts. And it's really great to hear from such an open minded Muslim who I think genuinely is trying to understand the other side. And so that's great. I hope to have him again on a future live stream. And so let's see, do we have any future callers here? Anyone in the waiting in the wings? We don't. I have a few comments I wanted to highlight. So Robert, just addressing the whole question I asked friendly Muslim about, you know, Islam raising the stakes so high, or Islam and Christianity with our eternal fate in the afterlife, and making that possibly a reason why parents get so entrenched and hostile to their children. So Robert says, it isn't always about hell either. I have a relative who's a cafeteria Catholic that believes everyone goes to heaven, and she threw a huge tantrum when I changed my religion. So that kind of thing of, I would call it the pick and choosers. So and my grandmother was one of those Muslims where she believed no one's going to go to hell, everyone's going to go to heaven, whether eventually or right away. I'm not sure. I don't think she ever clarified that point, but she believed that God was good and there was no way he would cause someone suffering like the kinds that are depicted in the Quran. I don't know how she rationalized that, to be honest. It's just, I think she just preferred believing it that way. And so that's very common as well. So why is there still antagonism? I think it's just the social pressure. It's just this whole feeling of you have left the fold, you have left the tribe, and that threatens the whole tribe. It brings, let's say you're a child and you have left this religion, it puts your parents under suspicion from other families, your extended family. And that's how religion works. It really uses the family ties, the tribal ties, the societal ties to keep you believing, to keep you uh, entrenched in the traditions and rituals. And that's why they have things like going to church on Sunday, going to masjid on Friday, to keep you in the fold. And of course, that has beneficial social purposes for you to all be participating in these things together. It builds tight knit communities. But I think anyone who has experience of living in a religious, particularly religious community, can see the dark side of that. Where if you stray from the norm, if you stray from the orthodox, then there's hell to pay, whether literal or metaphorical. And that's not something that's just exclusive to Muslim communities. You can see it in all kinds of religious communities. And again, it's that two-sided coin. You've got the love and you've got the fear. And with religion, they seem to always be working together like that. And it's really sad that that's the case. And thank you so much, Gerwak, for your words about my grandmother. Gerwak says, your grandmother's lessons and values live within you. You carry your grandmother in your genes, and through her lessons about who to be as a person, you can transmit these to the world. And that's very beautifully said. And I do completely agree with that. And I think if there's any way we can have immortality or to extend beyond our mortal lives, is through the things we do, our actions and our words, and how they impact people after us. If we lead by example, hopefully we can help create a better world in the future. And I think my grandmother did that for sure. She spread love and kindness to whoever met her. She was one of the kindest, gentlest people I ever knew, and she is missed by many who knew her and whose lives she touched. And when my time comes, I hope the same can be said of me. Yeah. A question from Zagros. Welcome, Zagros. I'm not sure if you're still in the live stream. Totally related question. Did you arrange your books by color? Very astute of you. Yes, they are arranged by color, as you can see. Yeah. And a question by Tanky. Secular spirit. Which current Muslim would you most like to become ex-Muslim atheist, and which one would you like least or care least about? That's a really good question. I really like that one. So, which current Muslim would you most like to become an ex-Muslim atheist? You know what? I do have someone that came to mind. So she's American. She's a U.S. Congresswoman, I believe. Her name is Ilhan Omar. I'm not sure if anyone lives in the States and is aware of her. I think she's a congresswoman for, I'm just looking it up here, Minnesota. So I think she, so the interesting thing about her is, I think what she's done is she's helped to integrate and normalize Muslims within the greater American society population, which is a good thing. But she's also advocated for how Islam is so feminist and is good for women, and how she's so proud to wear the hijab. And I think what she's done is she's helped enable the toxic ideas that Islam has about women and that Islam spreads about women. And in that way, while I'm sure she thinks she's doing a lot of positive things, and I think she probably has, in terms of just having Muslims be more accepted in society and not be oppressed and marginalized. I think she's doing a lot of harm in normalizing this whole idea that it's a good thing, or a way of, you know, uh, being proud or empowering. I think that's the word I'm looking for. That it's empowering to wear the hijab. I think she's done a lot of destructive things by endorsing that idea. And there's probably a lot of young Muslim girls in the US and probably throughout the world who have been inspired by her. And that's kind of sad. So if she were to leave Islam and renounce the veil, the hijab, that would be something that I think I would like to see, because then maybe I think she just has a lot of influence and power in that regard. So I think that could have a very positive impact for a lot of young Muslim girls who maybe will want to leave Islam if they're swayed by her arguments for leaving. Hopefully, they're good ones and not ones that are, you know, bigoted or whatever. And the second part of the question was, which current Muslim would you like least or care least about to become ex-Muslim atheist? So the funny thing about this question was, I had an answer right away. I knew exactly who to say. So there's a Muslim historian, quote unquote scholar, called Riza Aslan, or Aslan, I'm not sure how he pronounces it. And so he's written a few books about Islam. No God But God, I think, is his book about Islam. And he wrote a book about Jesus as well, I think, called Zealot. I could be wrong. Someone in the live chat can correct me if I'm mistaken. And this person, beyond just being a very dishonest, what's that word, interlocutor, or just someone who just doesn't really engage honestly when talking about Islam and its issues, and just about religion in particular. Beyond that, he's one of those Muslims who seems to have this very abstract, nebulous, unclear, hazy idea of what being Muslim is. If I was to kind of summarize in a nutshell, he believes Islam is just one way of tapping into the divine, whatever the divine happens to be. That's kind of unclear. Just the whole oneness that unites us and that is love, some kind of vague notion like that. And yet he says he's Muslim. And I think that's kind of harmful because he probably doesn't endorse a lot of the harmful ideas that Islam has about women, about homosexuality, about what happens to people who apostatize, and yet he still endorses Islam. And of course, he must have to endorse what's in the Quran, but he finds some way of rationalizing it and dismissing the parts that are harmful. So, someone who is kind of as sleazy and dishonest as he is, I wouldn't want him to be endorsing the ex-Muslim atheist side unless he just somehow found found the light, if you will, of atheism and completely changed his ways and became actually a really good advocate for atheism and a good critic of the problems with religion. But I find that highly doubtful. I kind of suspect he's one of those. This is just my suspicion, not really grounded in anything beyond just hearing him talk. That he might be one of those people who just kind of does this thing to make a buck, to just churn out books because he found his niche. So that's the answer to that question, Tanky. Thank you for that. Let's see. Tanky says 100% there's awesome. They can keep him. Thank you so much. Let's see what else we have here. Hawaii says good one, secular spirits. Lol, Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar from Somalia, Minnesota. Is that where she's originally from, Robert? I didn't know. Yeah, Tanky agrees. Ilhan Omar, oh yeah, that would be huge. Post-Muslim. By the way, post-Muslim, I just realized, so I got LASIK recently. I used to wear glasses, and apparently I didn't do a good job with the procedure because I thought your name was past Muslim, and I just realized now it was post-Muslim. So I apologize for incorrectly saying your name earlier. It is post-Muslim. And so a soccer player would be huge. And I don't think Coco Jasmine, a longtime follower, is here, but she made a bet that soccer would be mentioned in the next live stream. And what do you know? It's being mentioned. For any of you who don't know, I'm a big soccer fan. I play soccer, and some of you might notice that I have a little bump on my nose here, and that's from being hit in the face by a soccer ball. It comes with the game. So yeah, I think a soccer player would be huge. I think the obvious one would be Mohamed Salah, who's a pretty prominent Egyptian soccer player, star. If he left Islam and became a prominent ex-Muslim, like a vocal ex-Muslim atheist, that would be huge. The kinds of repercussions that would have on his personal life and his family, I shudder to think. And Tanky, actually, I just noticed you said that too. Can you imagine if Mo Salah became ex-Muslim? Complete meltdown. Wow. And Nazone75 says many Muslims, especially in the West, adopt a version that best suits them. So this ties into what I was saying about my grandmother earlier, about how she kind of just did the whole pick and choose thing of the version of Islam that she liked the best. I don't think it's even necessarily, especially in the West. I think just a lot of Muslims do it. It's just maybe in the Muslim world they're a bit more traditional, generally speaking. Count Dracula, welcome, Count Dracula. Good to see you again. Count Dracula says, I notice that there's a theme whenever I have discussions with Muslims about Islam. It's almost like we're talking about two different Islams. The misconceptions we've been told is what keeps us in it. I agree with you there, Count Dracula. The only thing I would add is I don't think there's two Islams, two different versions. I think it would almost be accurate to say that there's as many versions of Islam as there are Muslims, or Muslim families, let's say. But even then, there's probably variances between a parent and a child. So there's probably so many divergences, and I think this is one of the reasons why there are so many little sects and subsects. And so it's really tough to say what is the true Islam, what is the one perfect Islam, because you talk to a different Muslim and they have a completely different version, completely different beliefs, completely different interpretations of a certain verse. And so in that sense, it really is an illusion. Yeah. Thank you, Brother Ben. Don't forget to like the stream, you ungrateful bastards. Well, I would just like to everyone to, if you haven't already, please like the stream and the short film. There's a link to it in the video description. That really helps in getting more people to see it, and I think it has a really important message. And so the more people see it, the better. And yeah, if you can like and subscribe if you haven't already, that would be greatly appreciated. Another question from Zagros. Do you think that, oh God, you really had to ask me that, Zagros. So this is a controversial question. Do you think the hijab should be banned from public schools K through 12? If yes, why? So Zagros, I think I remember you mentioning that you grew up in France. I could be mistaken, partially in France. Uh, so I know that they've been a bit extreme in their position on things like the hijab and the niqab. I don't think the government should be in the position of banning items of clothing in schools. I think that's a step too far, and I think it will just antagonize the Muslim community, and there's no good that will come from it. While I do think that wearing the hijab is harmful for young women, and I think it's a load of nonsense that it empowers them. If anything, it erases them. And the argument is that it desexualizes them. No, it heightens their sexuality by literally covering them up, so people aren't aroused by them, essentially. So I, as much as I'm not supportive of the hijab, I think people should be allowed to wear it if they choose to, and I don't want to impinge on parents' rights to tell their kids what to do or not to do. So as much as I don't like it, I think parents, if they want to encourage their young daughters to wear hijab, they should be allowed to do so, because we don't want to go down this road of telling people what clothing they should or shouldn't wear, uh, especially if it's not directly harmful. Like, you could make an argument maybe that you can't go to school wearing a shirt that has like a picture of just adult rated nudity or something like that, or pornography. I can understand that. And there could be an argument from some to be made that the hijab is just as dangerous in that sense, but I disagree. I think it is really harmful, but it's not harmful in that kind of a direct way as something like walking around like blatantly showing pornography when you're in grade 2 would do. It's a much more complicated issue. It's tied to religion, which is tied to people's identities. That's not an excuse, but I think it has to be considered with a bit more of sensitive regard. And I think the answer is education. Give them more education. Let them decide for themselves, because we don't want to be in the place where we're mandating or restricting items of clothing. I think that's a bridge too far. And let's see, music guy, for the question, the question of a prominent Muslim who it would be good to see becoming an ex-Muslim atheist, Khomeini. I think that would be amazing as well. I was thinking too, maybe I can't remember his name right now, but the I think it's Aga Khan, the leader of the Ismailis, if I'm not mistaken. That would probably have a massive ripple effect as well. So Robert has a suggestion of the Saudi crown prince Mohammed bin Salman, I think. That would also probably have massive ripple effects if he apostatizes. It's over. I mean, it could be just over for him, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's a good answer too. Music guy says, or Khamenei. Yes, they're two different people. For those who didn't know, there's Khomeini and Khamenei. I'm not sure if they're both still alive. Anyway, Tanky asks, do you have an MLS team? Well, I'm in Toronto, so I guess Toronto FC. I did go see a game earlier in the season. They are terrible, so not much of prospects for them to win anything this season. I am a Manchester United fan, though. In the English Premier League, not much of a chance of winning anything with them anytime soon either, unfortunately. Oh, Secular Spirit says, I actually got it right. It was past Muslim. My bad. I need to stop changing names. Okay, well, I'm glad I'm not blind as a bat. Thank you for correcting. Okay. And let's see if we got anything else here. Oh, Holy Humanist. Nuria is here. So I highly recommend joining Holy Humanist's channel, you kind of get a nice perspective on Islam and its issues from the perspective of a woman, a female ex-Muslim. Her channel is great. She says, "Hi, secular spirits. That was so powerfully done and pretty heartbreaking to hear. Thank you for adding a whole new dimension to these conversations through stories. More power." Thank you so much, Holy Humanist. Holy Humanist is doing a live stream with Apostate Aladdin very soon. Later this week. You can find the links to that on Holy Humanist's channel. I believe it's on April 15th. I could be wrong, so don't take my word for that. You can find more info on her channel. So, Brother Ben, so this seems to be a growing conspiracy amongst people that Apostate Aladdin and I are the same, or we're in the same room, or we're brothers or twins. That is not the case. But Brother Ben suspects Apostate Aladdin is secular spirit with glasses on. Prove me wrong. Hashtag Clark Kent Superman. Hashtag not fooling anyone. Yeah, well, I don't know what I can do to dispel the rumors besides both of us being in the same place at the same time. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But we are two different people. I think I'm a little bit. I have a bit more appealing eyebrows than Apostate Aladdin does. The reason I bring up the eyebrows is because we were joking about maybe we should start a feud just to drive that all important social media traffic. You know, like people were so close and friends, and then they have a feud, and it's all shattered. And my suggestion was, what if we feuded over who had the better eyebrows? If you have a better suggestion for that, let me know in the live chat. I might actually do a poll about that. What should we feud over? And let's see what people say. KCA Randy says tons of better leagues than MLS. That goes without saying if you're a soccer fan. Let's see. Zagros agrees with me on the whole hijab issue. Personally, I don't think it should be banned. Yeah. And let's see. Count Dracula has something to say about the Yaseen story. It made me think about my situation and how I'll deal with my family as a fresh ex-Muslim atheist. And sigh, I wish we could just accept people regardless of their belief. I wish so as well, Count Dracula. And I do remember our conversation. I do wish you the best of luck being a new ex-Muslim atheist. I think the best thing to do is just figure out all that stuff for your own before you broach the subject with your family. It really is sad that we can't, like a family just can't accept each other regardless of their belief, but that's the toxic part of a religion like Islam. Is, like I said earlier, it ingrains itself in your identity and in your community and society, where if you're in a Muslim community, Islam is so important that if you do leave, or even if you just question it, then I totally understand it. Like if you're a full-on believer, then obviously there's going to be issues. A continuation of Count Dracula's comments, especially religious people, because they have the upper hand given that we are brainwashed since birth. Well, that's the thing that leads to it, isn't it? It's really unfortunate. Nazon75 says, as an atheist of Palestinian origin, oh, another atheist of Palestinian origin. There's more than one. Who knew? While I support the fight for Palestinian rights, I no longer feel that Jerusalem is of significance. What's your take? That's a really good question. So I also support the fight for Palestinian rights. And I never thought about it before, because one of the things that causes so much conflict is the status of Jerusalem as a holy site amongst the three major Abrahamic religions. And it's been the cause of so much conflict, so much bloodshed just within Jerusalem itself over the decades, fighting over who's allowed and who's restricted. And perhaps if we eliminated the whole religious side of it from the Palestinian side, that would help things. But it's really tough to say, because if you just look at the Israeli behavior, they just, especially with their settlements that they're building in the West Bank, they just take, and to just entrench themselves. So I don't know if it would do any good for Muslims to just kind of say, you know what, Jerusalem is no longer important. You can have it in some sort of negotiation. Would that do any good? I don't know. But what I will say is, I think if we, so I think the issue between Israel and Palestine isn't solely about religion. I think it's the case of one people, one power oppressing another. It is an apartheid state, and religion just makes it worse. It just makes people more entrenched in their positions. And I'm not excusing this, but I think when Palestinians really become more extremist and more fundamentalist in their Muslim beliefs, I understand why they're doing that, because they're so hopeless. They have no other recourse but to turn to, let's say, Hamas. I'm not saying that's right, but I understand it. I think it's wrong and it makes things worse. But when people have no hope, obviously they're going to turn to more extreme solutions. So the answer is to try to find a secular solution, a peaceful solution, one that doesn't exploit or undermine the Palestinian people. And it remains to be seen if Israel actually wants that or not. It's like, if you just look at what's happened over the last couple of decades, it doesn't seem like Israel is interested in that. They just want to entrench and empower themselves as much as possible, and they're not interested in giving Palestinians equal rights within their state. So I don't know the solution to that. I don't think anyone does, and I'm probably going to talk about this in more in depth in a future video. It's just I'm focusing on other topics right now because this one is a heavy one and it will need a lot of work, a lot of research to get into. And let's see if we have any other comments or questions. Tanky, you're a soccer fan, I can tell. Canada killing it in the World Cup qualifiers. Yes, Canada qualified for the World Cup for the first time since 1986, and they've done it in style. They won their group over the US and Mexico. I think they won their group. There might be another game left. I could be wrong. But they're definitely in, so that's great to see. Secular spirit question here from post Muslim: is Islam or religion problematic if it gets watered down to fit secular humanist society? That's a good question. Thank you, post Muslim. Well, that's kind of the arguments that people make about Christianity, where it has not always, and there are still very fundamentalist Christians with extreme views all over the place. But the argument is that if you look at Christianity, for the most part, it's watered down a lot. A lot of people don't actually believe the things in the Bible literally, and a lot of people don't practice the things that are in the Bible. People don't want to have slaves, for example. So that's a possibility that perhaps it would be a good thing if Islam reached that level as well. But I would just say we should take it a step further and like take the good things from Islam or religion, the building of community, the building of caring for others, for being selfless and altruistic, and take the Islam part out of it, take the dogma out of it, and I think the world would be a better place. It's just we need the excuse that religion offers us by, threatening us and promising us all of these wonderful things in the afterlife to do it. So that's where the religion comes in. It gives us the excuse to do those things. It gives us the justification for having these beliefs and the motivation to practice them. I think what we need to do as a secular society is to give people those motivations and inspirations without needing to resort to religion, without needing to resort to promises of an afterlife or threats of a hell. And if we manage to do that, what a world it could be. We're a far away from that today, but I'm hoping it will be different. I'm hoping things will change. Question from Music Guy 20. What if you change the son character in the short film to a daughter? Would the situation be different? I don't think it really would, because I think especially when it comes to ex-Muslim women, they seem to often have really fractious relationships with their mothers. If anything, the repercussions would be even worse, wouldn't it? I think the fear of saying the truth to your mother if you're a daughter and you've left Islam, it would be greater, because the mother would think, oh, you're just doing this to be with non-Muslim boys, you just want to have sex. And that would probably be said to the son too, but I think it's just so much more dangerous and heavier on the female ex-Muslims. I didn't consider doing it about a daughter and mother, but I think that's a totally valid way of looking at the story as well. It would probably be worse, if anything. Squirrel says, maybe when Aladdin takes off his mask, he looks like you underneath. Well, if Aladdin ever does do a mask reveal, I guess we'll find out. A friendly Muslim says, plant wars, battle of the plants in the background. Yeah, the one over here is taking over the whole apartment, actually. So I think there's a clear winner already. And I just noticed here that Robert is backstage in the private chat. Robert, you can message me in the private chat if you would like to call in and be on camera, be on screen if you don't want to be on camera. All right, Robert is ready. So, Robert, you're going to join in 3, 2, 1.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Robert. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. You have a little bit of background chatter, so it's a little bit hard to hear you. Anything you can do about that?
Here, let me try moving it. How about now?
That's way better. Thank you so much, Robert.
All right.
So thank you for joining the live stream, and thank you for watching the short film. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for making it.
Thank you.
I have a question that sounds really messed up, but it's
Go
something
ahead.
that I had on my mind the entire video. Because it seems the boy seems to be empathizing with his mother, but have you ever had moments where you enjoy seeing them get so mad? And the reason is because when I first became an atheist when I was like 10 or 11, like I remember this one time where like after seeing them like inflict a bunch of stuff like on me and my friends, to see them get so mad about me simply being an atheist, something about it felt so good, and I hate it. And I just wanted to know if other people have these invasive thoughts or these moments where they're like, yeah, moments like this.
So I'm just trying to understand your question. So like in terms of taking pleasure in the suffering?
In their like parents suffering. Like I'll give you an example from my experience, which is so you can understand why I'm thinking about this and why this was on my mind. When I was 13, I was about to get confirmed, and they were like putting me through the whole confirmation process, even though I've been an atheist for a long time. And I remember we were having a discussion in confirmation class, and my teacher was asking me questions, and it kind of reached the organic point where I didn't say that I was an atheist or that I didn't want to get confirmed, but I very strongly implied it. And my teacher started crying. And it was the most vindicating moment of my childhood. And I just feel so gross about it because I feel like it's wrong. But at the same time, I don't know how to handle this. And I just wanted to know if other people have experienced such a thing.
Well, if anyone in the live chat wants to share a similar experience, please do so. I can tell you just my own thoughts about that. So I personally have never had that, but what I will say is I think it might come from this satisfaction of finally being able to be yourself and not have to worry about stepping on someone else's toes or offending someone or fearing what they're going to say, what they're going to do. It's just like this. I think it's just coming from this place of freedom and not caring how it affects other people. I think it just feels good to just be able to be yourself.
That perfectly makes sense, because the longer time I spent being able to be myself freely, the less those feelings came. And so yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm gonna be thinking about this all the time.
Oh, that's great.
I mean, for the rest of the night, I'm gonna be thinking about this. I think this is really yeah.
That's
Thank
great.
you for making it. It was very good. I look
Thank
forward.
You so much. And Tanky says, just to what you said, that it's not wrong at all, in my opinion. It's freeing, yeah.
Mhm.
And Post-Muslim says it depends on how they treated me. If they were abusive towards me, absolutely grabbing popcorn and a soda.
Yep, that's exactly the grabbing popcorn and soda. Yep, definitely.
Yeah. And
Oh,
Tanky adds, I had lots of preachy religious friends at one point. I kind of enjoyed winding them up, and they did it to each other also, Christians and Muslims.
mhm.
So yeah, so it might be a little bit of that as well, of just, being told, oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong, or you're mistaken, mistaken, and then just being able to just be yourself and not care what they say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you for the
Yeah.
advice. Oh, also, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you happen to know any ex-Muslims who can read and write the Arabic of the Quran very well, or who know it very well?
Who know it very well, as in
Or like well enough
to,
that if I were to, yeah, like what well enough relatively, like better
do you mean
than,
like to a scholarly level, or?
I mean, it would probably be hard to find a ex-Muslim scholar as far as I know, but I mean,
Yeah.
you know, like whoever, I don't know, anyone who can help me with that, because, well, it's kind of embarrassing. I'll write it in the private chat.
Okay. We can talk about that afterwards if you'd like.
Okay, so I'll DM you.
Sure.
Or something. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, or?
No, I think that's it. I might probably, as I know as soon as I log off, I'm gonna have another question. So I'm just gonna log off, and if I have another question, I'll post it in the chat. Anyway, thank you so much.
Sounds good. Thanks for joining, Robert.
Yeah. Bye.
And Tanky says SS sounds wrong. Yeah, I remember when I first came up with an idea of what to call this channel, and Secular Spirit was an option. The first thing a couple of friends asked, well, your acronym is going to be SS. But you know what? I felt, whatever. So what? They're going to just hold on to those two letters for eternity. So I decided to just go for it. Yeah, sex spirits. Yeah. Oh well, that one also kind of sounds a little potentially offensive for some people. Pots, hi Pots, secular S. Yeah, that's a good way of maybe putting it. Let's see. While I was talking to Robert, there were a few comments I wanted to just address as well. So from Post Muslim, can human beings without gods find some other way to establish potentially harmful in-groups and out-groups? If so, what's the point on focusing on Islam? Maybe education and tolerance are the answers. So to answer your question, yes, I think human beings by their nature, and just looking at our history, will find any possible way to create harmful in-groups and out-groups. So I think the thing about Islam is, and other religions, is that the stakes are so high in them, and they're promising the answers to all of life's big questions. So that elevates things to a high level where people just become entrenched in their positions. I think it's different when it's something like, I don't know, the Communist Party, or some sort of secular association, because they're not claiming to have the answers to the question of the meaning of life. They're not claiming to know what happens after death. They're focused on issues in the here and now and how to make this world a better place. So I think while there is that danger of the in-group and out-group, it isn't as bad. And yes, the answer is just tolerance and being good and kind to each other as much as possible. Next question from Zagros. Have you seen the Sam Harris Cenk Uyghur interview? Yes, I have seen it. I saw it years ago, I think when it was brand new. And so to kind of tie to this, Tanky says, I used to like TYT, then they went hardcore SJW. I kind of agree with you, Tanky, there. And Zagros, TYT is a joke. Yeah, I used to like TYT as well, and they just went into a weird tangent, weird territory, chasing clickbait, obviously, and they just went really hard into the anti-Trump Russiagate stuff. I'm not a supporter of Trump by any means, or Russia. It just became this obsession and hysteria, I would say. And so I thought, to just go back to the original question, I thought the Sam Harris Cenk Uygur interview was horrible. I really like Sam Harris in many ways, and I think he did really well considering how adversarial and kind of bullying Cenk Uygur was. I really recommend, if anyone hasn't seen this, to check it out, because it was a really fascinating discussion about a lot of different topics, religion primarily, and the accusations that Sam Harris has gone about being Islamophobic, I think, are off base and inaccurate. But having said that, there were good points made by Cenk here and there, I suppose. I mean, if you're talking for hours, you're bound to say something that isn't just asinine every now and then. So yeah, I hope that answers your question, Zagros. Question from Crown Dracula: what do you think about Muslims proving the validity of their religion? So that's an interesting question. I think I'm kind of missed the essence of the question, but I'll try to answer it. So, is it okay for Muslims to try to prove the validity of their religion? I hope they do, because if they're arguing that it's the one true religion and they're trying to spread it, or even they're just trying to rationalize and justify it for themselves, I hope they have arguments to prove it. And I think ideas both pro and con for religions should be allowed, and the best arguments should win. The most coherent, logical, rational, reasoned arguments should be the ones that prevail. And in this domain, I think the arguments for Islam fail. So they should try to prove it, and we should try to disprove it. Benjamin Iota, welcome to my earlier point that we should just take the good parts of a religion like Islam. Benjamin completely agrees. We can and we should. Another question from Count Dracula: what do you think about Muslims proving the truth of their religion by referring to cosmology, so teleological arguments, cosmological arguments, instead of talking about their indefensible book? Well, the funny thing about those arguments is, let's talk about specifically, say, the cosmological argument, or even just saying, look at the universe. Do you think this all could have just happened by chance? There had to be a designer. That's just that. Even if these arguments were true or accepted, that doesn't prove that Islam is true. You still have to prove that this creator is the one who revealed the Quran to us. So it's almost an incomplete argument, because I think you need to then take the step proving that the Quran is from this creator that you proved with the cosmological argument. And this is something I've tried to explain to so many Muslims, and they miss the point. They just think, oh, well, obviously it's from this creator because it's perfect, and then you get bogged down in that whole stuff. So maybe what you're asking me, Count Dracula, is the reason they're focusing on those things like the cosmological argument is because they don't want to get bogged down by the things in the Quran that they know are problematic. That's a possibility, but eventually when you talk to a Muslim, they're going to defend and try to justify the Quran in many ways. So in that sense, the cosmological argument stuff is a waste of time. And let's see. Oh, Post-Muslim says he met the Young Turks in person, and Kasparian was really cool. Cenk was too tired to interact. I actually interviewed John Idarola once for an article I did a long time ago. Really nice guy, really interesting perspective. I think they've just gone down a weird road in the last, I don't even know, 5 years or so, pretty much since Trump got elected. Tanky says, so I'm sorry I missed the film. I'll watch it when the stream ends. So yeah, that's a good reminder to anyone. If you haven't seen the short film I made, the link for it is in the video description. It's called Yaseen, Ramadan Tale. I think it has a really important message for ex-Muslims and Muslims alike, or just anyone really who wants to understand what the impacts of being ex-Muslim can be. And so I highly recommend watching it. not just because I made it. Let's see if there's anything else in the comments. If not, I will end the live stream. I just want to thank everyone for joining and participating and engaging me. It really, really helps me feel like this is actually reaching people and making a difference, and it encourages me to make more content like this. So let's see if there's anything else in the live chat. Tanky says the best religious debate I've ever seen was the Monty Python cast debating the life of Brian. If anyone hasn't seen it, I haven't seen that, so that's definitely on my to-watch list. I love Monty Python. I particularly like The Meaning of Life, so that one would be awesome to watch for anyone who hasn't seen it, and I will definitely watch that, Tanky. So thank you so much for the recommendation. Okay. And I think Count Dracula is trying to join the stream right now. Count Dracula, you can message me in the private chat if you want to just talk for a little bit. I've got some time before I end the stream. You ready? Yeah, okay. So Count Dracula, you are joining in 3, 2, 1.
Hello. Hi. How's it going?
Pretty good.
So how much time do you have left? Do you have
we can talk for like 10 minutes, I think, if that works for you.
Yeah, so what was I gonna say? Yeah, I just have a few questions. Like instead of hiding behind the live chat, I decided to let me just so your just questions about your channel. So your channel is basically like normalizing ex-Muslims, like normalizing discussions about Islam and ex-Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty vague. No, what I wanted to say is, like, what is your position when it comes to Islam? Because some people, they say, "Oh, I'm trying to deconvert people. Like, religion is bullshit. Let's deconvert people." And there are other people saying, "No, I'm not trying to deconvert people. Let's just normalize the discussions." Like, where do you fall into this? What category do you fall in?
So I'm not actively going around, whether in my personal life or on social media, of saying you should stop being Muslim. Or I'm not DMing Muslims saying stop believing this stuff. I'm not doing it that kind of way. I'm just trying to share information. So I'm sharing my views on Islam, my experiences of being Muslim, my criticisms of Islam, and I really want people to just make the decision for themselves using the information I share and that other ex-Muslims share, because I think that's the best way to do it anyway. But just speaking generally, I hope that Islam is no longer a big presence in the world. I hope that we reach a point where not just Islam, but just irrational, unfounded beliefs in gods are gone from our world. I'm not saying that should be done through legislation or through the threat of violence or anything like that. I just want people to do that of their own volition, where they realize they don't need it. So the change needs to come from within. I'm just sharing these thoughts, and hopefully people take what they can from them and decide for themselves.
Yeah, that's I think that's like a peaceful way to do it, a pacific way to do it. What do you think about? Do you know Atheist Republic?
Yes, I do.
Atheist Republic. Have you seen their channel? Like, does it? Do you resonate with their? Do you do the same thing as they would do?
No, not quite. So I don't watch many of their videos, but I followed Atheist
Like when it
Republic.
comes to, for example, when it comes to, for example, religions, like, do you think they? Because I don't know, I'm not even sure myself of what they're trying to do. Like they're just trying to normalize discussions, like you're doing, like many people doing, or just saying religions are bullshit. Let's get rid of it. Secularism all the way.
So
Like
I can't say exactly what their aim is, because I'm not involved with them. But what I will say is they are clearly trying to normalize just atheism in general, and they're trying to normalize criticism of religion and dissent from religion. At the same time, they're doing all the social media clickbaity things they possibly can to just drive traffic. So they'll highlight
Oh,
controversial things, controversial points of views. They'll do all that kind of stuff, and that's not my style. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a wrong thing to do. I just don't think it's necessarily productive in many ways, especially if you're trying to sway people who are religious.
yeah, like because it's like they have walls in their brain. You can't really get to them unless you are
Yeah.
understanding. Another thing, very quickly, like what do you what was I gonna say? Yeah, how did you deal with it how did you deal with like deconverting when it comes to in regards to your family? How do they know, like, or because I don't know about your family situation.
Sure.
Not aware of it.
So so my story is kind of unusual because when I was growing up, I was more religious than my parents. So my parents were,
Interest.
from my point of view as a kid, my parents were just like the typical lazy Muslims who didn't really do anything they were supposed to do. So they never
Okay.
prayed. They sometimes fasted. My memory isn't the best on that, but my father would fast but still smoke cigarettes and drink coffee.
Wait, aren't you Palestinian?
I am Palestinian, yes.
Then what the
So,
hell? Like you're supposed to be
well,
like very devout. So, like,
we are typically very devout. Yeah, that's why I was saying earlier when there was someone who was another Palestinian atheist. I was like, "What? There's more than one?" But yeah. So they just seemed like, oh, they're just. I just thought they were not very good Muslims, sinners, and I thought, oh yeah, they're gonna go to hell because they keep not doing what they're supposed to do. And then when I left Islam, I was no longer living at home. I was living in another country. And I kind of slowly and gradually revealed to them my thoughts about Islam. And they were pretty accepting. And uh, I, they were okay with me leaving. And I think at some point we must have had the conversation where they essentially revealed to me that they were not Muslim. So
oh my goodness,
the whole time
you're the luckiest motherfucker in the world.
I know, right? So this is why I have the luxury of being able to do this stuff, because a lot of people don't with their family. So I'm
Wow.
not. I do use a pseudonym, and I try to protect my real identity, but I'm not as afraid of the consequences of it being revealed as other Muslims are, ex-Muslims are, because they're
I
in the closet with
understand.
their family. So just to end the story, to recap it for you, is they basically pretended they were Muslim for my benefit, because we were living in a Muslim country, and they were worried of what would happen to me
Oh my
if I was,
goodness.
I was, if I was in school and I was saying, "Oh, I'm not Muslim. God isn't real." Like, what kind of repercussion that would have for me when I'm a kid and I don't really understand the consequences of saying things like that. So they kept it a secret, and I think they did it for my benefit. They probably would do things differently if they could repeat it. So it was really simple in that sense. It just, I was very careful of how I revealed it, because I didn't know what they actually believed, apparently. But from my extended family, I keep it a secret. So I do have a lot of very religious family members, and they don't know. They don't know I'm,
That's
and I just keep it a secret. I don't talk about religion with them. I avoid it. I just basically pretend that I'm a shitty Muslim too when I'm
but they're
around
gonna
them.
know about your channel soon. You have to
If
be
they
careful.
if they find out
um,
about that, I guess I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
yeah, like that's crazy. They pretended to be Muslim. It's like an endless cycle. So they pretend to be Muslim, then to get you to be Muslim. What if they then what if they're not there anymore and you're still a Muslim? What would have happened then?
I know. I always wonder that. Of It's possible that if I had stayed in the Muslim country I was living in the UAE, if I had never moved to the West, to Canada, and just been independent and exposed to all these different thoughts and ideas and religions and atheists, maybe I never would have left. And let's say my parents went away, and or they died in a tragic car accident or something. Uh,
Oh,
who
I wouldn't
knows?
assume that. Hopefully
Who
not.
knows? Yeah,
I was gonna
hopefully
say
not.
when you just mentioned it, I was just gonna ask you deconvert because you were exposed to atheist content. You said, or you talk
Um,
to atheists.
I didn't talk to atheists, but I was exposed to atheist content. That wasn't the reason I left. It was more of just an internal process of just thinking things through and realizing. It just kind of hit me over time that wait, why am I believing this stuff? Like, on what basis? And I kind of just realized, oh, I'm believing it just because I was told it was true. And once I saw it from
like
that
everyone else.
perspective, yeah. Once I saw that from that perspective, I realized I never really experienced God. I never saw God. I've never seen this afterlife. I've never seen all these things, angels, jinn, whatever you want to call it. And yet I'm believing all this
Yeah.
is true. Why? At that point in my life, I was just questioning everything. So Islam was just part of the questioning. I was questioning capitalism. I was questioning going to university. I was questioning like women. I was questioning everything. So
What is there's actually women. There's actually like this. Do you
are
know
women
this,
real?
there's a conservative online. His name is Matt Walsh.
Matt
He started a
Walsh.
series. He started a series called "What Is a Woman." You saw the trailer. There's like he just goes around asking people what is it? Because it's like it's like a criticism against trans people, whatever. Um,
uh, it's funny. It's funny. I don't know. I'll check it out because I don't think. So what was his name again? Sorry, Count Dracula. You there? I think we lost Count Dracula. Count Dracula? Okay, I think we lost him. You can join back if you want. You can just message me in the private chat once you're back. Let's see if there's any other. I think I'm going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. 2 hours is long enough for a live stream. Robert says, I used to wonder if you or Aladdin is my favorite ex-Muslim YouTuber, so it's relieving to know that you're the same person. Oh, okay. So you've joined the conspiracy, Robert. Okay. I see how it is. And Pot says, the real question is, who went with the plant and bookcase idea first? So I've had the plant and bookcase forever, so I don't know when Aladdin got his, but it's definitely a coincidence. I guess great minds think alike. And let's see, anything else here? Robert, what do you think about people being atheists but still doing fun religious rituals and festivals? This is common in Japan and some parts of Canada, but not as much elsewhere. Why not? Why not? I say. I mean, if anything, that's the thing. The thing that matters about them is doing things communally and together. If we just strip them of their religious meaning and significance, all the better. Like, I think it's just a case of we just need the excuse to do things together. And if it's easier to just keep doing, let's say Christmas things, why not? Does it really matter if we believe in it being Jesus's birthday or whatever it's supposed to be? It doesn't. I think Count Dracula is back. Count Dracula, you there?
yes. Hi.
Yeah. Welcome back.
So your screen froze. I thought you're the one who quit. Whatever.
Oh no.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's my my internet. Just one more thing. I'm not gonna make
Sure.
this very long. One, I was my mother. She told me a story about like something supernatural. She experienced something, not her personally, but her friend. She went with her friend and they they experienced something. So basically, my mother, when she was a kid, her and her friend, they went to how do you call them? Like people who can. What do you call the people who can like speak to jinns?
I don't know.
They have a name.
Mediums? I don't know what you would call them.
Do they have a name in English? Yeah, whatever. So she went there with her friend, and her friend she had a crush on someone. She wanted to make that person fall in love with her. So my mom went there. She was very skeptic about this. She was scared, not skeptical, but she was scared. So and when she went there with her friend, they started. So basically, she started doing her little thing with. I think it was a crystal ball or something. And she's the woman who was like communicating with the jinns supposedly. She started I don't know, reciting spells and spirit medium. Not really sure. But so what happened then was my mother started reciting the Quran in her head, or that's what she told me. She started reciting the Quran in her mind, and somehow the spirit medium, so called, detected that. She sensed that someone was reciting the Quran in the room, and she said, "Who is doing that? Who is reciting the Quran? Is there like?" Like, who is doing that? Because that's keeping the jinns away, and that's like messing up with the signal, with the jinn signal or something like that. She told me that story, and it made me think like, okay, so she has that memory. How can I, like, where could it, how could it possibly be that, where can be the error? Like, you get that? Like, do you have any stories like this, and that you, that are like making you very skeptical? Like, you can't really find the error.
I see your point. One thing
Mm,
that comes to mind for me is that I remember when my grandfather on my father's side died. So he was in thousands and thousands of kilometers away. My father woke up and knew something was wrong. He just felt something was wrong. And
mm,
sure enough, the news came soon after that his father had died. And so there's also a thing they call like female intuition, where women just
mm.
sense something, and it's hard to explain those sorts of things. And I think it falls within the same kind of category as these, medium experiences or sensing things. And like, how is this possible? I don't know the answer to that. What I think might be something we can say is that we don't fully understand.
Wait, just sorry to cut you
Sure.
off. The story was that your mom sensed the
my my
grandfather's death
my father
before it
sensed.
happened.
Yes.
What? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it is possible that there is some sort of connection between us that we don't understand yet, that we don't have the tools to explain. But who knows what that means? Like, that doesn't mean that, oh, there's a god, or oh, there are jinn and angels and all that. We don't know. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's possible. To me, my point of view is that there's a lot of things that are possible. That doesn't mean we should start believing in them. It's just a case of we have to do more research and wait until we have the evidence before we believe them. I think it's a good thing to explore uh, possibility, the possibility of such things happening,
Of
because
supernatural,
yeah, I
even
mean,
though it's impossible to explain that, but whatever.
well, yeah, you could make that argument that
Well, if
supernatural
it
by
takes
definition.
14 centuries, then it's impossible. Like, why do we?
Well, you don't know, like, maybe there's something that we haven't understood or explained yet that might actually prove Islam is true. I'm highly skeptical, but I can't say it's
Oh,
for sure impossible. Like it might be the case where like the Quran isn't actually from Allah, the creator, but there is a creator. You know what I mean? Who fits
there
some
is
of
a
the,
creator.
like, some would argue that it's like an unfalsifiable premise. So maybe we can never know. But like, a good point
Oh,
from
okay.
Roberts, female intuition is just emotional intelligence. Most men have been trained out of it. Unfortunately, that's possibly the case.
We have
Uh,
been evolutionarily expelled out of that skill.
yeah, and D. Boudreau makes a very good point. How many times have we had a bad feeling and nothing has happened? We dismiss the misses and remember the hits. This is very true, especially for the psychics and the mediums and all that. It's actually been proven by studies that we'll remember the one accurate thing the psychic says and forget the 10 things they got wrong. And there's actually a trick to it. There's a trick to how, like, for example, if you're a sort of young woman and you come in to see the psychic, the medium, they know that the reason you're likely coming in is because your parents died. So they'll say, I'm
No.
sensing a family loss. And it's the opposite is true. Like, say you're an old person who comes in, maybe your partner died.
So they
And
just have to rely on that probability of you
there
coming
there's
in.
there's trick. I'm simplifying what it is, but it's
Yeah.
actually pretty sophisticated. There's tricks to it. And Tanky brings up Darren Brown. Darren Brown is a mentalist who's really great at exposing mediums. Yes, I highly recommend you checking out Darren Brown on YouTube if you can. A very interesting person. But yeah, Count Dracula, I have to go, unfortunately. I was
Yeah, that's
glad.
it.
It
That's
was
all I
great to
had.
have you.
Thank
I'm
you
glad
very
you
much.
came.
Yeah,
Feel free to join future live streams. It's good to see you.
yeah.
And yeah, thank you everyone for coming and for engaging again. And I really appreciate the support. I'll be back with more Ramadan themed content very soon. And so yeah, to all of you, a good night. And for anyone who hasn't seen the short film, please do so and share it with your friends if possible, because I really think it's important to share that message. Otherwise, that's Secular Spirit out. Farewell.